Hi, my name is Mark Eisenhut, and I represent Tim Ballard. As many of you who know me know, I don't normally comment on my cases publicly, certainly not on social media. And there's an important reason why I am going to do so right now. I have gotten to know Tim over the last almost 2 years that I've worked with him. I can state unequivocally that he is an extraordinarily good man with an extraordinarily good family who does not deserve the lawfare that he has faced. It is extraordinarily sad. I feel terrible about it for him and his family, and frankly for all of the impacts it has had, because he has done such amazing work, and to some extent this lawfare has set it back. But as you may have heard, there was a very, very good historical ruling that came out just a week or so ago. Very, very good for him. It terminated one of the main cases against him based on some really egregious conduct, based on theft of his private documents from his personal computer files, his electronic files, the equivalent of sneaking in the dark of night, as the judge said, and stealing his personal and private documents, including privileged documents, documents that are clearly sacred and private and religious in nature, documents that are financial in nature, none of which are any of her business, and certainly not her business to be using her attorneys and publishing these things to the world on social media, through public filings, etc. So I want to talk about this ruling, and many in the social media world who have concluded from day one without really taking the time to understand or study the facts or wait for the facts to come out, and even in the mainstream media, they've largely jumped on the bandwagon of, well, he must be guilty, he is guilty, and we're going to go all in on he's guilty. And when the evidence starts to come out that he's not guilty, we're not going to change our tune because we're already committed. And so people have taken this ruling, which is historical, shockingly amazing, in favor of Tim Ballard and strongly against Celeste Borys and her attorneys, and they're trying to find ways to flip it in favor, as far as from a public reporting standpoint, in favor of Celeste Borys. And they're saying, the main thing they're saying, this doesn't mean that she wasn't sexually assaulted. This doesn't mean that her allegations of sexual assault aren't true. Well, in the next few minutes, I'm going to walk you through some things that I think will convince you that her allegations are false. So let's just take a look at the evidence. You can reach your own conclusions. And as I hope you understand, I'm not doing an entire trial, which often takes weeks. I'm just presenting for 15 minutes or so some of the basics here. Let's start with what happened on the 4th of July, 2023, obviously an historic day because of our country's celebration on that date, but also a historic date because Sound of Freedom movie came out and blew the box offices away. That featured one of the operations headed up by Tim Ballard, in which he rescued many, many children down in Colombia from the diabolical world of sex trafficking. That movie put on the map and brought to the attention, the world's attention, because it went worldwide, not only through the box office, but also through streaming and every other platform you can think of. It brought a bright light to the problem of sex trafficking, the problem that largely the demand comes out of the United States of America, the problem that open borders was allowing our own governmental agencies to become agents of sex trafficking. Hopefully not intentionally, probably not intentionally, but shockingly, they were delivering children to people who were unidentified, who they had no idea if they were actually related or not. And these children, as you've heard in the news, are unaccounted for. And we've heard numbers as high as 450,000 children still unaccounted for, just delivered from cartels on one side of the border to who knows on our side of the border. Tim's efforts were shining a bright light on that. Let's talk about who just got dismissed. Celeste Borys. She was his executive assistant. And she was his assistant as some of these rumors started to come out that supposedly people were accusing Tim and OUR of various types of misconduct. False accusations, as you'll see, but those rumors were floating around. July 2023 is an important date because of the evidence that we have, and I want to show you this. This is where Celeste herself is sending a text message to a friend, and she's saying, and this gives you a little bit of insight into her background and perhaps her motivations that come out later. She says, "I'm in love with my boss who is married. Most popular guy in the world." Now this is just a few weeks after Sound of Freedom came out, so he's suddenly become potentially the most popular guy in the world. And she says, how did that happen? She's got this infatuation with Tim, and he's happily married. He's not about to have an affair with anybody, including her. And so she's about to have her heart broken, unfortunately. She also notes, I have 2 maxed out credit cards. And she says, I don't even know how to get into my bank account. And you'll see a couple of weeks later, she's noting something else that's going on in her life. This is a text she sent to a friend as well. And she's seeking to find out, am I making the right decision on divorcing Mike? Does Mike really want a divorce as well? I hope the answer is yes, because it will help my guilt. And perhaps not surprisingly, there's also this text from Celeste to a friend of hers that says, why does everyone put Catherine, meaning Tim's wife, on a friggin' pedestal? She's not perfect. I'm not jealous. It's just annoying as, you see the word. She gives up so much, blah, blah, blah. Does he not give up anything? Ugh. And so those are some of the feelings, thoughts, and potential motivators that are going on with her. September 2nd, 2023. I want to show you a video, some excerpts of a video, where Celeste Borys is participating on a podcast of Marisol Nichols. Tim Ballard is there, and frankly, in the audience and in and around here are many others from OUR, all of whom will attest that Celeste was extraordinarily happy, giddy, pleased to be there, which she later says the exact opposite, falsely. But let's just play a couple of videos just to set the tone.
And miracles happen on every single op. And every op that I haven't been on, because they've done so many, I think about the miracles I've heard of and I've seen. And it's like Jesus is helping every single op that I've never been scared. I've never been afraid.
So right here you see she's saying there's miracles happening on every single operation. She's been on several now. That Jesus is helping on every single operation, that she's never been scared, she's never been afraid. She knows that she's doing genuine work. She later goes on, again, many months later, to allege that all the work is fake, that they're not really doing anything real, they're not really saving children. So sad that anybody would make that allegation. The facts of many, many, many children being saved, many traffickers being caught, incarcerated, prosecuted, and thrown in prison, well documented, which Tim Ballard is responsible for. And others, but he's the one who organized OUR and brought all of these efforts together. So let's look at some of the things that she says.
She's worked, I'm just picturing, all the cases I know, she's been on multiple continents. She actually helped to infiltrate a case. I won't get too many details, but say a little bit about this. But she helped to infiltrate an operation or a trafficking organization that's trafficking North Korean children through Europe, Mexico, and into Los Angeles.
I couldn't believe how one survivor was able to open up to how much we were able to find just from her. Yeah. And it's such a great case that I've never heard or seen him break down. But he had to walk out of the room 3 different times because he had to walk out of the room because I kept looking over at him and I'm like, okay, he needs to start laughing because his tears coming down, those are tears of, he lost it 3 times because it was so heartbreaking.
With my wig.
With his wig.
And I'm like, I gotta go to the bathroom again.
Yeah, and I'm
like in the bathroom just like,
and it just
I can't believe the story.
Because this girl, we think she was, how old do you think she was?
She was like 13 or 14.
13 or 14, and she said, she was from North Korea, but she was so confused on so many things because she was trafficked at such a young age, but she didn't remember so many things before. And so, but she was so innocent inside. Well, they're so innocent anyways, but they get so many things stripped from them. She's trafficked from like 6 o'clock in the morning to 11 o'clock at night. And I just sit there and I think, oh my gosh, like I couldn't even imagine. And so, but every time we go to where we need to go to see her, we call our agency and we buy her for the day. I looked at Tim and I wanted to just go with her, and I was this close.
And I had to pull her back. I'll just go with her and just be with her.
So I have this ability, I think, to be able to connect with people. Yeah. So I'm like, let me just go. Let me just go because whoever she's living with, I'll be able to find out some. But he you actually got super mad when I
got
implied.
very
he's like,
Yeah, I yelled at her,
he's like, we push it to be able to make things happen, but that's pushing it way too far. I'm like, I'll be able to sneak out if I need to, but let me just go to her apartment. But we found out a lot on that trip.
No, this is going to be a huge, huge case.
Yeah.
We're in the middle of it right now, but it's big. But I'll tell you, if I didn't have a female partner with me, I couldn't do any of this. First of all, she wouldn't talk to me like she can talk to her.
Oh, yeah.
Also, I just couldn't be there. If I was alone with her, just to manipulate the situation so I don't do what she thinks.
It's so true.
But she's there's like, oh no, that made sense to her, right?
Right.
I mean, it's absolutely impossible to do anything without a female operator.
Right.
Because even going into the place, I knew that everything that you just said, it's so true. I brought nothing to that op, like as far as I didn't have a specific role in mind going, except everything he just said. But we were there for about 48 hours total, and everything that I needed to do to be there, that if you were there on the bystander just kind of watching around going, why is this random just sitting right, you know?
Right.
But I was there protection of it's so true. I wish if I could get into details, you'd be like, oh, that makes sense. Yeah. Meanwhile, me and Tim around the corner banging on the walls,
turn the shower
and we're trying not to laugh with each other.
Because,
we couldn't just show up and do, nothing, and so or act like
because then she'd know we're cops.
Exactly.
Right?
Exactly.
Yeah. So anyway,
she's talking about a specific operation. There was a real victim that they were focused on. They were buying this victim so that they could bring her into a safe place and have some conversations with her, get to know her, see if they could figure out how to crack this trafficking ring. And she's just talking about how important all of this is and how important it is that what she and Tim are doing are really helping these children. And she even talks laughingly, as you saw, about me and Tim were banging on the walls. They're making it sound like they're participating in sex activities with this victim so that the traffickers think they are who they say they are. They think they're customers in this sex trafficking world. That's why they do these things, this couple's ruse. He and Celeste were pretending like they were into this victim. All right, so September 9, 2023, that's an important date because Celeste has a text exchange with a friend of hers named Tyson. So Tyson had been working with OUR, and he says, I heard things from Tim stealing hundreds of dollars from OUR to him sexually assaulting individuals while on operations. The rumor mill was turning, and I just needed to disconnect from it all. He's talking about why he kind of pulled out of keeping track of all of this. Now, what does Celeste say? This is super important in light of her false allegations to come later. She says, Tyson, it is so sad. I've been doing operations since last October. That's how I landed being Tim's EA. Logistically, it was easier, and turns out I'm a pretty good operator, LOL. Here's the important part. But I can assure you, all the rumors are disgusting and not true. I know because I've been there. So she flat out, and this, by the way, is the day before she resigns. She's never going to have another physical interaction where she's in the same physical place as Tim, other than in the courtroom, unfortunately. She's not going to be on an operation with him. So to the extent she's ever been sexually assaulted, which she hasn't, it would have happened in the long distant past by now. And she says these rumors of sexual assault on anybody are completely untrue. September 10 and 11, she submits her resignation. She's very happy in submitting her resignation. She says she's being completely transparent with Tim, and being that transparent, she says, I can't tell you how grateful I am for all the experience you've provided in my position here with you. She offers to transition to a new EA to be available for at least a couple of weeks to do that and just to help. And she says she's happy to do so. September 13, an important event. So not only now is Sound of Freedom huge throughout the world, but Tim Ballard is in high demand for podcasts, for interviews on mainstream media, for meeting with high-up political figures, et cetera, and he is convinced by some significant political figures that he should probably consider running for Senate because Mitt Romney was vacating his seat. And so it starts to become publicly announced as of September 13th that he is strongly considering doing that. And in fact, you see this Deseret News article that makes that known. Okay, so now he's got Sound of Freedom casting a huge light. He's got political aspirations. And by the way, the polls are showing that he's hugely ahead in the polls, that he'll probably be a shoo-in for this candidate. September 19th, you remember that podcast that happened back on September 2nd with Marisol Nichols? Now, Celeste is saying, I need my podcast out. It hadn't hit as much as she wanted it, at least, and she wanted to get it out there. And she says, I don't even mind if you don't blur my face, just put it out there, I want it out there. That's September 19th. And again, a year or so later, she claims, oh, I was forced into doing this podcast. Everything I said was untrue. Tim made me say it. It's just not credible. Look what she says now, September 25th, 2023. Remember now, she's resigned over 2 weeks earlier, and she's writing a letter for the benefit of Tim's church officials because they're hearing these rumors as well. And so he wants them to know what other people have experienced with him. She writes a lengthy email, and here's just one small excerpt from it, all of which is consistent with this. She says, I have been working with Tim Ballard for almost 1 year. I have felt safe being Tim's partner in every operation I have been on. I have never been taken advantage of. Never been taken advantage of. He has always respected me and all other operators around me. So she's not just saying she never got sexually assaulted. I mean, she felt safe. She's been never taken advantage of, but she's been around the other operators and none of them have been assaulted. And had they had any bad experiences, she would have been the one to tell because she's right there in the middle of it for at least a year by this point in time, as she says. Okay? Again, she's saying these things long after any assault type interaction could possibly have ever happened between her and Mr. Ballard. Well, unfortunately, after that, she finishes her stint as an EA for Tim. She's no longer working with him. We know by this point in time that she had wanted a divorce from her husband, that she was in love with Tim. She said that in her own words, that she was no longer working for Tim now. So obviously her hopes for having a relationship with Tim would have been dashed by now. And frankly, he was always very clear about how much he loves Catherine and how devoted he is to his family. So he wasn't going to go there, and I'm sure she figured that out and became very clear to her. Her credit cards are maxed out. She said that as of July. She has no access to bank accounts, and she no longer would be receiving money from Tim. So what's going on? Does she have some motivation because her only hope is to go back to her husband and get access to money? Are people coming to her offering her money because they want to help take down Tim, and they're saying, hey, if you change your tune, we'll make you rich, we'll give you a day of glory or a couple of years of glory? We don't know. We don't know what exactly happened, but we do know that on October 10, 2023, she filed a lawsuit. We also know, frankly, that she's amended that lawsuit a couple of times and totally contradicted later what she said on October 10th. She said, such and such never happened. She literally specifically says something didn't happen. And then 6 months later, she says it did happen. It's that bad. For example, when she files her original complaint in October of 2023, she tells the court there was never any vaginal penetration. She specifically puts that right here in her complaint. And yet, almost a year later, June 24, 2024, she says, well, actually, he put his penis inside my vagina. So she is just contradicting herself all over the place. She is not credible. But I think she also realized, because of the analysis of what she's saying here, that these things have happened to her after she said these things never even remotely happened to her. She realizes, well, gosh, if I really got sexually assaulted, I should have been filing. I mean, people in the public are saying, well, why didn't you file with the police? So belatedly, to try and probably create some credible type cover for herself, she makes police filings, but they're not sincere. They're not genuine. Why do we know that? Well, we got a hold of one report where she filed a complaint down in Florida. She filed it on February 5th, 2024. And this is the report. It says that she was not willing to do a sworn statement. She claimed to be in a hurry. And then they tried multiple times to get a hold of her and get her to give them more information and make a sworn statement, and she never would. She just wanted to be able to say, I made a police report, but she wasn't going to follow up with it, and she wasn't sure as heck wasn't going to put her name under a sworn statement. Of course, shortly after she filed, and then she gives all these stolen documents to her friends who are filing, and they're putting these things out in the public and having a heyday on social media and claiming, we know Tim's guilty. None of the documents show that he's anywhere remotely guilty. Had they shown that, this would have been a different conversation, obviously, but nothing suggests that he's guilty at all. But stealing documents is egregious. And so we had to go to the judge. We asked her and her attorneys, will you please not do that? Give those back, destroy them. You can't steal documents. They wouldn't listen. They just had all kinds of fun out there in social media, traditional media, press conferences, whatever, blasting these private facts, religious facts, financial facts, attorney-client privilege facts, etc. So we had to go to the judge, and we had to make a motion. The judge took this very seriously. This process occurred over a 1.5-year time frame, where we showed the judge what was happening. We asked the judge to order them to stop doing this. They promised the judge they would stop doing it. They didn't stop doing it. We had a whole trial, a 2-day full trial, where Celeste Borys testified, Tim Ballard testified, other witnesses testified. We had written argument. We have gone thoroughly through every ounce of evidence that could possibly be gone through about her theft of documents. And the judge took another many, many months to carefully and appropriately ponder everything that was presented to him. And what he says in the end is, these facts are worse than any other facts I have seen. He had been presented with cases where cases were terminated because people stole or otherwise improperly accessed documents. And he said those cases amounted to terminating sanctions, where the judge dismissed the cases. And as you see here, he said the conduct in this case is more serious and egregious than the conduct in any of these other cases for several reasons. I can't find a reason not to dismiss the case because this one is far worse. So let's take a look just briefly at some of the things he said. Okay, this is a 58-page ruling, thoroughly analyzed, thoroughly thought through. On page 6, he says, the conduct by Miss Borys and her attorneys was deliberate and egregious, particularly their casual disregard of potentially privileged information. Although Miss Borys insists she did not know what she was doing was wrong, that too is not credible. Multiple places in this ruling, he says she was not credible on this testimony she gave. She was not credible on that testimony she gave. In other words, she's lying under oath. Okay? We go down a little bit further. He says the wrongful nature of that conduct, and that conduct, by the way, let me just back up for a quick second, was he said it was the equivalent of her going into an office, sneaking into an office in the dark of night, using her access to secretly photocopy documents from locked file drawers, including documents that were marked as privileged. Then he says the wrongful nature of that conduct should have been obvious to anyone, including, importantly, her lawyers. The conduct that she engaged in was indeed egregious. She got terminated because of stealing documents. She is also being sued right now for defamation. She will have her day in court to say, I did not defame you because everything I said was true. We don't think she's going to be able to prove that because what she said, the evidence strongly shows, was not true. To accuse a man of sexual assault on multiple occasions, by the way, she made at least 30 allegations of sexual assault, all of which are not credible. There's extraordinary amounts of evidence showing that what she says belatedly happened never happened. But she will have her day in court, and Tim will have his day in court. And we believe that it's going to be abundantly clear, based on this evidence that I shared with you and much other evidence, that Tim is innocent. He loves his wife. He loves his family. He did not engage in inappropriate sexual conduct of any nature whatsoever with Celeste Borys. That will be clear. Thank you.